My name is Alex. I lead our Asia business at a company called LayerZero. Before I begin, I'd like to please just give a warm round of applause for Erica here for putting this together. Just for the record, this is my 4th BUIDL Asia. I think we should come up with some badges, probably the most formal one in terms of how I dressed. I think the first 3 I definitely had my shorts on, but started wearing shirts. Now I'm in a suit. Next year I'm probably going to wear a tie. I know that Erica has mentioned about institutionalized institutions a few times. That's definitely how I see how the crypto space is evolving. And to LayerZero, there is also a very natural progression as to what we do as a technology company. So a couple of months ago, I had the honor of meeting and having dinner with Eric Trump when he visited Seoul. And I wasn't the only one, by the way. There's a lot of people at the dinner. And I had about a couple of minutes of conversation about what he's doing at World Liberty Finance, American Bitcoin company. And he was, interestingly enough, making his analogy of his real estate business. As you know, the Trump family runs one of the largest real estate businesses in the world. And the implications of stablecoin in his business, right? So number one, every Friday when he has a dinner with his family, he's always stressed out and worried about whether a lot of the deposits that he has made to his partners are going to arrive within that day. So he's not going to be bothered by all of these people asking for money on the weekends. Stablecoin can solve that. Number two, he was talking about some of the real estate projects that he was involved or looking into in the Middle East. These are some of the billion-dollar projects, resorts and hotels. Oftentimes, these investment opportunities are available for just a few people that are very wealthy, obviously. But he was talking about the new world in which he can open up that investment opportunity to thousands and perhaps millions of people by tokenizing that financial product. And what he has spoken about wasn't about the prediction of what's going to happen in the future. A lot of these things are already happening, and it's a reflection of what's happening on chain, right? So if you look at the numbers in terms of the stablecoin volume, in 2024, we saw what we call the Great Flip, where the combined transaction volume of MasterCard and Visa, this is obviously everyday credit card usage that we're all very used to, was surpassed by the stablecoin transaction volume. And the year after, about $33 trillion of stablecoin volume happened, which is the double amount of what Visa has done. And then just this month, January this year, the monthly transaction volume of stablecoin has surpassed about $10 trillion within a month. At this pace, this would rival actually the world's combined GDP, which is sitting at about $105 trillion. So that gives you just about the perspective and scale of how the value transfer, the transaction, and the payment space is changing architecturally, not just incrementally. And stablecoin, real-world assets sit right at the front of this shift. Let's take a few steps back and see where these tokens, whether it's an RWA token or stablecoin, is being deployed, minted, and developed. And that's what we call a blockchain. Blockchain is not nothing, in my opinion, fancier than just a completely globalized, decentralized ledger where these transactions are being recorded. And there are about 350 plus blockchains today and still counting. And you can think of these blockchains as almost like a fragmented country or an island which has its own language, people, more importantly, currencies. Now, inherently, as more users, applications, and asset issuers are emerging, they need to find these blockchain networks to deploy their assets on, right? And as I just made an analogy with blockchains and countries, you need some third parties and the bridge to connect these people and countries, right? And in this space, we call that interoperability. So interoperability has gained its significance, I would say, the past 5-6 years, as mentioned, as more blockchains emerged. People, applications saw more usage in terms of moving assets from chain A to chain B, which we call bridging, but also swapping, right? So exchanging asset to asset. How this bridging experience used to happen pre-LayerZero was that in the middle, there used to be a single point of failure smart contract that verifies whether someone has a specific amount of assets. So let's say if I want to bridge about $10,000 worth of PYUSD, stablecoin issued by PayPal, and I want to move that from Ethereum to Polygon, I would go to that smart contract and say, take my $10,000, give me another $10,000 of PYUSD on Polygon. What that smart contract is doing is essentially locking my $10,000 of PYUSD and creating a synthetic asset, a completely new asset in a wrapped way, call it wrapped PYUSD. It's more like a voucher that you can use in Polygon, right? Now, two problems that has happened with such monolithic bridge, as we call it, is that once that smart contract is hacked, your original asset as well as that wrapped asset is also gone. In fact, 60% plus of the entire DeFi hacks account for the bridge hacks. Second, now if I wanted to use that wrapped PYUSD in another chain, say Monad, Near, Solana, I would have to unwrap or unlock that asset back to Ethereum and then lock it again, each of which entails gas fees, more time, and just a poor UI and UX. LayerZero has solved this problem in 3 different ways. And I like to make an analogy with, again, the traditional finance way. If you look at the SWIFT network, the way that these banks communicate with each other isn't actually by sending money to each other. So what I mean by that is, if I want to send $1,000 to Erica, who has a Bank of America account, I have Shinhan Bank account. When these banks verify that I do have that money and I am verified to send that money to Erica's bank account, these banks are not actually sending money to each other, right? They're actually just exchanging messages. It's really just crediting and debiting on a ledger because these banks are sitting on the same network, the SWIFT network, and the message that they're sending is within the same standard called MT, money type, developed by the SWIFT. So what LayerZero has done is that we developed our own OFT, Omni-Chain Fungible Token Standard, which for asset issuers and applications, if they integrate with the OFT standard, just like the money type by the SWIFT network, when they scale and expand across different chains, they can simply burn and mint across different chains via the unified layer of liquidity. So we now have about 750 plus asset issuers that have adapted the OFT standard, that they are burning and minting across now about 172 different blockchains, whether it's EVM, Solana VM, Ton VM, Move VM, Stellar, Starknet. So we connect all of these fragmented islands all together. The second thing that we did is that LayerZero as a messaging protocol, how does this messaging really happen, right? So from chain A to chain B, when users and applications or institutions are sending these messages cross-chain, there are 2 things that are very important. One, for that specific blockchain to communicate with another blockchain, they need to have that set of smart contracts that's developed by LayerZero, right? So we work with, again, 172 blockchains so that they contain the LayerZero smart contracts so that they're part of the mesh network of 170 plus chains that we support. Last but not least, I just told you about the monolithic bridge having a centralized single point of failure smart contract. Instead of that, we have over 60 plus decentralized verifiers, the likes of Google, PayPal, Paxos, Dunamu, the Ant Group, who actually help verify all of this cross-chain communication. And asset issuers and application builders can completely control and configure who gets to verify their asset transfers, how much, and freeze functions and whitelisting and blacklisting, all that. So this is how we facilitate blockchains to talk to each other. At large, we work with asset issuers and blockchain networks. For asset issuer standpoint, a lot of what they really care about is making sure that they maximize their liquidity issuance across different chains, because blockchains basically function as distribution networks on chain, right? So instead of having to manually bridge all of these assets from chain A to chain B to chain C, by deploying it as an OFT or adapting with the OFT standard, they can, as I mentioned, burn and mint or lock and mint across hundreds of different chains. For blockchain networks, similarly, their goal is to onboard some of the most meaningful and the largest blue chip assets, the stable coins, the DeFi assets, the BTC-Fi assets, RWA tokens. And usually the way they do it is they would have to work with an individual asset issuer and ask them to bridge onto their chain. Whereas if they're an OFT and the LayerZero network is part, or that blockchain is part of the LayerZero network, they can simply just onboard the native version of that asset easily and the most safest and seamless way. We call this omni-chain. Gone are those days where you're only building within a single chain or even a multi-chain. We encourage asset issuers to build omni-chain. Every chain possible, every chain serves different purposes. They try to solve different problems. So we sit right between asset issuers and blockchains, basically to amplify and grow this ecosystem. Not only is this transfer very seamless, safe, and fast, it's also extremely cheap, which is also getting into that institutional space that Erica was talking about. We believe that what OFT is doing with stablecoin is going to open up the future of FX market, for example. So if you look at this slide here, you're seeing, if you go to LayerZeroScan.com, it's essentially an explorer for every single cross-chain message that LayerZero processes. So you can see every message that gets past LayerZero messaging protocol. You're seeing about a $273 million worth of USDT moved from Ethereum to Plasma when Plasma L1 launched, which took about less than 60 cents and also less than 3 minutes. And this was just the beginning. Well, like when Plasma launched, this was just a whole series of transactions that they have made. And at the top, you see that they were able to move $800 million under 81 cents, essentially cheaper than your iced Americano at Starbucks, to move that much money, right? So we believe that this is the best, smartest form of money, period. And stablecoins as OFT can make this happen. Right now, more than 70% of the stablecoins in the world have adapted the OFT standard and therefore being scaled and expanded across hundreds of different blockchains. And we also not only help these asset issuers, but help institutions like PayPal, Paxos, JP Morgan to run their own value transfer business. So right now, we're very much focused on helping banks to run their own interoperability business. We're helping payment companies to process their own swapping and bridging experiences. We're trying to do this around the world. And as you saw in the previous slide, most of the stablecoins now are primarily US dollar denominated. But I'm of course very biased as a Korean myself, but I'm personally very excited about the rise of Asian stablecoins. There are about 8+ major economies in Asia that are all chomping at the bits to launch their own national currency denominated stablecoins. Again, really starting the puzzle pieces to the future of the FX market. We do about, we have done about $230 billion+ of asset transfer between chains. In the payment scale, that would put us about the 8th largest payment company in the world. We right now power about 750+ assets across 170+ chains. Last year has been pretty crazy, so we're seeing an explosion of more assets adapting and interested in the OFT integration and the adoption. And the two largest drivers of this shift is stablecoin and RWA. And this is again mainly driven by institutions and banks and capital market players. How do they leverage the existing way of doing business, whether it is asset transfer, transaction, or payment, by adapting the blockchain technology to make it more decentralized, permissionless, but in economic terms, much cheaper and much faster. We have some of the use cases that you guys might be aware of, right? So on those global market or Denaris, D shares allows users like us to be able to trade some of the largest S&P 500 or NASDAQ stocks on a completely tokenized way, 24/7, 365. You also see Theo's TH bill, which is a tokenized treasury bill in the US. Again, I don't mind this, but I'd like to see more native use cases in where we are in Asia, right? So personally see the next 2 years to be such a pivotal point for the Asian stablecoin and RWA adoption, right? So I grouped some of these markets and countries together for a reason. So you're seeing Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan with an actual license approval for banks and institutions to issue a stablecoin. Hong Kong just announced that they approved HSBC and Standard Chartered. Korea is, I think we're doing our best. actually not sure if we are, but the regulator is having a lot of talks. There's a lot of politics involved, obviously, but we're confident that there's a lot of builders and institutions that will emerge slowly but steadily to be able to build something meaningfully, right? And then the Philippines and Thailand are just wrapping up their sandbox environment. Vietnam, India, and China, massive potentials there, but I think sort of on observation in terms of what would likely happen. So the key point here is that it is extremely regulatory heavy. It's extremely dependent on all of the regulators and what they do, and it all also trickles down, or it all goes back to also things like the Clarity and the Genius Act in the US, right? In terms of both institutional adoption and settlement and payments, the point that I'm trying to make here is that regionally speaking, if we see more institutions and companies coming up with a variety of different and new applications that adapt to crypto and blockchain, I'm just going to go back where we're going to see the world of tokenization of every asset, and that being able to transfer, swap, and bridge in the cheapest and the safest and the fastest way possible, hopefully through LayerZero. So with this context, today we're very, very excited to announce something that we actually haven't really announced officially yet externally. For, I believe, the first time in Korea and also one of the first times in Asia, we had just announced, I believe, PR-wise, like this is super fresh off the shelf 2 hours ago. We just signed a deal with the Korea Gold Exchange, and Korea Gold Exchange will be tokenizing their gold product in a completely tokenized manner, right? So I don't know if, I think some of the Koreans here who live in Korea, they have literally vending machines in department stores. You can go and verify via your QR code, and then with the ticket that you receive, you can go to the physical gold exchange and get a gold bar. I am extremely excited that this is going to be tokenized. Last week I had visited their office in Jongno, and they have an entire district filled with physical gold exchanges, people shouting different prices, and I think these are going to be completely replaced by, again, via being tokenized. So very, very excited, but fundamentally believe that this is really just the beginning. So this is what LayerZero does. We power all of crypto within a single protocol by connecting every chain and every asset issuer. I think that, I should probably change this slide. Tokenization of everything is not the future, it is already happening. And what I want to leave you here with you today isn't necessarily that this is a future, but we need a lot more innovation. We need a lot more collaboration progress to make this happen and to turn that into reality. And there's something tremendously powerful about being able to obviously, burn $1 billion of an asset and mint it in a completely different network. But that is completely different from, let's say, are we ready to see and use, let's say, all of the financial products being traded on New York Stock Exchange in a completely tokenized manner? And the answer is no, we're not ready. Technically speaking, there is a fundamental problem that most blockchains all carry, is that it's all homogeneous in terms of its architecture. All of the validators have to validate every single set of same transactions across the world with all of their nodes. We've actually spent the past 2.5 years thinking about how to really solve this problem, because the crypto space currently, in terms of the technology, if you look at some of the on-chain metrics like the transactions per second, we celebrate somewhere close to 4,000 to 5,000 transactions per second, where Visa does about 40,000 TPS. New York Stock Exchange depends on 2 million transactions per second. It took a bit long for us, but we realized that zero knowledge is really the way forward, so that these blockchains are no longer bound by these bottlenecks of having to prove every single transaction as is. And then we looked further into the zero knowledge proof and probably put together possibly the best zero knowledge proof team on the planet. And we did this in a completely stealth mode 2.5 years ago. And the essence of what we have done is that when you look at, again, a blockchain as just a simple, globalized, decentralized ledger, there are 3 main components of what composes of a blockchain, right? There's compute, storage, and network. And in terms of all of these categories, after 2.5 years of work, we have achieved about 100x breakthroughs in all 4 categories. And as a result, we announced back in February that we're going to be launching our own L1 called Zero, the world's first heterogeneous blockchain, where we're going to set up different zones for payment, trading, and general purpose zones, where each of the zone is not going to be bound by the validation work that is within a different zone. So for example, we're going to power New York Stock Exchange, who requires 2 million TPS. All of the validation, all of the transaction work that is being done in that zone is not going to be bound and dependent upon the other zones, for example. So with this, we're actually very excited to have been invested and co-developed by the likes of ICE, Intercontinental Exchange, the parent company of New York Stock Exchange, Citadel, the world's largest market maker and hedge fund, DTCC, US clearinghouse that deals with trillions of dollars. These 3 companies, we believe, are essentially the backbone of the US finance. And we're also co-developing this with Tether, Google, Cathie Wood by ARK Invest. And most people don't know this, but also Nexon is part of the launch partner for Zero. If you ask me, I think we would be the last company to build yet another L1. I was the first one to raise my hand and challenge everyone and said, do we really need another layer 1 in this world? And I'm very well convinced, just the way that I dressed here, we need more institutions to make meaningful progress, not just talk about the progress, but actually put their development teams to work to tokenize all of the things that they're doing in the traditional finance way. And for that to come, in terms of the technical infrastructure, we're just simply not there yet. So we're very, very excited to see where Zero is going to go. We're going to be launching this by the end of the year. So if any of the builders are here that are interested in such high-performance blockchain or interoperability in general, obviously, please grab me. In today's talk, I threw a lot of numbers in billions of dollars. And I believe that with the tokenization of everything, with the high-performance blockchain and the collaboration within this ecosystem, soon enough, we're going to change. We're going to see the change of this, capital B to capital T, where $1 trillion of assets are being transferred, or on a daily basis across different blockchains, across different assets, and across different geographies. So that is the future that we're seeing, and we invite all the builders to build that future with us. Thanks for listening.